Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar. My name is Heather Ackerman. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Modus Create, and I'm going to be the organizer for today. I hope you had an easy time signing in and getting connected to our webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them, and we will try our best to get a question and answer session going at the end of the webinar. Gregor and Jay have a great presentation for you. They're super excited to talk about Ext JS 5 tablet support and the new version of Sencha Cmd. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and pass over the presentation to Gregor. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. All right, show my screen. Thank you, Heather, and welcome everyone to our webinar. My intel today tells me that some of you are just waking up and others are about to call it a day, so thank you all for joining us today. In this session, I'm going to introduce a few interesting facts about tablet support in the latest and greatest Ext JS 5. While I'll try not to get too technical, I'll be talking about changes in the class system, but only related to the mobile experience, the new event management, widgets, and a little bit about mobile deployment options. So recently, I wrote a guest post on Sencha blog, outlining the ways of sharing code between Sencha Touch 2 and Ext JS 5. In the comment section, someone proposed that Sencha Touch is a much better option for tablets over Ext. Since the difference in widget portfolio is so stark, this comment had to relate to performance difference probably. And I would have agreed 100% if the topic had been Ext version 4. In the pre-Ext 5 world, my favorite framework, hands down, was Sencha Touch 2. And it almost felt like sinning, since being a co-author of an Ext book, that my favorite was actually Sencha Touch 2, in fact. However, Ext 5 may have changed that. The fifth iteration of the framework implemented 2.5 years of experience with the best mobile frameworks in the world. The Sencha Touch. We can see that across the board from the class system, event management, widgets, which I'm going to be talking about to greater detail. With the recent updates, Ext JS was made very performant on mobile, but it's meant to work with tablets only. This is a very logical decision, since all the powerful widgets we really got used to in the years working with Ext are really not made for palm-sized phones, for the bigger real estate. So those who need to present their mobile experience on mobile phones can now actually, I would like to have a drum roll now. We can share and reuse code between Sencha Touch and Ext JS. And this is possible thanks to the changes in the class system. In version 5, Ext experienced a major upgrade to the class system, and I'm going to review only the parts relevant to development on mobile. If you're a touch developer, you're probably used to constructing or defining classes using the config object, like in this example. This is possible because of the support for the whole stack of getters, setters, and the rest of the game. And even for the pros of you, Ext factory method. Touch developers, on the other hand, I guess I missed the slide, sorry. And what I meant to say is, even though Ext JS does support config system, it does not really enforce it. So for the same example, the HTML property will belong outside of the config object. And this is before we get carried away with Ext 5. This is going to be the case in the newest version of the framework as well. However, Ext 5 now knows a new trick. It's capable of understanding the properties inside config objects, actually translating them. Those that should belong outside of it is going to apply to the proper properties. So this solved one of the major issues in sharing code between the two frameworks. However, there is a catch. The catch is you can only use the system for properties that have getters and setters. And in fact, most do, like HTML here. And those that do not are the ones that usually rely on the difference in component lifecycle between the two frameworks and usually cannot dynamically update themselves. One such example is layout. In Touch 2, this would work perfectly. Layout fit will definitely do the trick in config system. However, in Ext 5, the framework will complain it would not understand how to work with us. It's fairly simple. You can't really change layouts on the fly. You can have a fit layout and then dynamically change that to border layout, for example. However, there is a way out of that for most cases if you want to actually share code. And one of the solution I can propose is actually overriding constructor, which is the first function that gets called when instantiating a component, and then you can override the config object that gets passed to the instance. I'm not going to get any more technical about specifics on reusing code. If you really want to learn more about that, feel free to go to such a blog or follow this link and get there, read more about reusing code. Another important improvement comes from the event system. Touch being the central input method for touchscreen, which is why Ext JS 5 bundle immense touch event and gesture support in the framework now. And this will work outside of the box, even for the applications that are migrated from Ext JS 4 to version 5. And the key player of this upgrade is the new event normalization pattern that is able to translate common events into variants relative to the platform. In this particular example with mouse down event will be used for platforms that actually have mouse support, like desktops. If the framework detects touchscreen, usually tablets, it will be able to translate that event into appropriate for that platform, such as touch start or pointer down. MS pointer down is going to work for Internet Explorer under version 11. And then similarly, or maybe I should better say reversely, gesture recognized are now gain support for desktop browsers. So you can use gestures, previously known for on touchscreens in the Sencha Touch 2. We can use that on desktop applications. Now, obviously, some of those are not going to be applicable, like pinch or T, those that use multiple fingers. You can't have multiple mouse pointers on desktops. So another catch here is, mouse is not really same as touch. So on mouse over, enter, leave, and those mouse motion events are actually only going to work on desktops. So on device that actually support pointer events, I have similar actually events as mouse motion, like mouse over. Those events will be disabled to prevent undesirable mouse over behavior. So these few events are going to be working on desktop only. As for momentum scrolling, we got used to on mobile devices. This is going to be automatically enabled. Ext JS inherited that support from Touch 2, and Touch Scroller gets automatically enabled for Ext JS applications when they are ran in on tablets. Touch Scroll does not really require any special configuration. Everything is going to be automatic unless you need to modify anything. And then another catch with the event system is we should really be careful about using native listeners, because Ext JS now uses a delegated event model. And this means that there is only a single event listener for each event type assigned to either a window or document object. So as long as you use the Ext JS APIs to assign event listeners to DOM elements, you'll be doing good. You're perfectly safe. However, if you want to use another library or just plain JavaScript to attach event listeners on DOM elements, then you may experience some issues in timing or maybe even a multiple execution of callbacks. And now this leads me to widgets, where I'd like to show some changes in how actually some widgets use the event updates to optimize their presentation. And one such widget is obviously grid panel. On desktop, and if you look at this screenshot over here, desktop version of a grid panel will require you to hover over headers in order to show that button and then show the context menu, like in this disable sorting in columns. So this is going to work as usual on desktops. On tablets, since the framework understands it's a touchscreen, obviously you can't mouse over, right? And you could never trigger this button to be visible. So now on tablet, the widget by default is gonna recognize long press event. So users can actually tap and wait for a few seconds, and then the grid will automatically actually show the menu. So that works perfectly. You're definitely encouraged if your applications use mouse motion events or context menu and things like that to use one of those alternatives for touchscreens. Mouse over, again in grids, usually used for row highlighting, is not going to be there. However, if you kind of think about it, highlighting is only useful to easily detect the position of a mouse pointer on the screen. So as user moves to see which row is highlighted. And touchscreens do not really suffer from that problem. In using finger, you can just tap on any row you like. So mouse over and row highlighting is not available on touchscreens, obviously. However, it just may not be needed anyway. Another widget that had a very interesting update, and I'm really glad about this, is the tab panel. Previously, if you remember, the template was pretty much the same, with text and maybe the little X button to close the tab. But this time around, we have full support for icons. This is just one example, and you can see this on official Sencha Ext JS 5 examples for the tab panel. However, you can just as in Sencha Touch 2, you can use left align or top align or any other way of presenting your icon, which is really exciting, especially for those designing UX. Another thing I'm really excited about is the new charting package. So a few months ago, Sencha introduced the third iteration of their charting package. It's basically the third rewrite. And this one was meant for Sencha Touch and mobile developers in the beginning. And they enjoyed a truly phenomenal charting capabilities and performance. So the same charting package is now available in Ext JS. And this makes it the very first shareable package between the two frameworks. You can actually use the same code on both frameworks. I definitely encourage you to give it a try, either through Ext JS 5 or Sencha Touch Complete. It's really an amazing package. So finally, let's talk a little bit about mobile deployment. This is definitely a new topic for Ext JS. We never really usually most of us never used to deploy XJS enterprise apps on mobile devices. So we have a few options, and the most common option is obviously Cordova. So your ExtJS app will definitely work beautifully when wrapped in Cordova. And as a matter of fact, you can actually use Command 5 for native building. Those of you familiar with Sencha Touch 2 native building can use the very same Sencha app build native to build for any of the platforms supported by Cordova. So actually, at this time, I'm gonna try to show that in my simulator here, I have actually built an app. This app is going to show a grid component and a chart. I'm going to launch it. Well, this does actually really fast. So we have an Ext JS trial, of course, and then this application was wrapped in Cordova using Sencha Cmd 5. I'm going to let Jay speak to Sencha Cmd 5 to greater detail in a few minutes. As you can see, there is no highlighting. However, long press actually works as, press and wait. There it is. Charts are just phenomenal. Okay, let's go back to our native building. Another option, and this is actually an excellent option for all of you building enterprise frameworks. Of course, if you build an application, if you build an enterprise application, most of you are probably going to be interested in something more kind of enterprise, with a more enterprise kind of mindset, which means usually security. And Sencha has their own, the new BYOD, bring your own device platform called Sencha Space. And Sencha Space actually supports Ext JS beautifully. You just need to add your application, actually add URL to your hosted app, and it will work outside of the box. I actually have one of those ready right now. Let me just show that real quick on my Mac. Let me see if this is visible. There we go. This is my this is actually a real device. I'm going to be tapping space. Okay, let me input my super duper secure PIN. I hope you didn't look. Okay, let's see. This is loading off of my computer. Okay, this is. I'm gonna press now. This is Sencha Touch 2 application, in fact. So let's take a look at the rich one, the bottom one. This is Ext JS. Okay, Ext JS is loading. We can see the loading indicator right here. Okay, there it is. It's the very same application that we just saw in the simulator. Pretty much the same thing. Oh, I'm trying to tap on the window. So this is me using actually tapping on the real device. Long press right here. Okay. So this is a real device, and you can see how actually fast everything is. Okay. If you really want to learn, definitely encourage you to do so. Learn more about Sencha Space. Feel free to visit the page on sencha.com. I definitely encourage you to give it a try. So this just about wraps it up. I know there is quite a bit here. If you have any questions, just write them down, and I'm going to be more than happy to answer at the end of this session. Heather, back to you.
Okay, Gregor, thank you. I am going to pass over a presentation to Jay, and hope you enjoy.
Hello, everybody. This is Jay Garcia and Grgur. Fantastic presentation. Today I'm going to be discussing Sencha Cmd 5, and we're going to be looking at some of the options you have available to you to generate applications as well as code. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Okay, so Sencha Cmd 5, if you're new to it, is a suite of extremely powerful command line tools. It is literally a collection of freeware tools as well as some code that Sencha has used to generate a quite amazing package for us. I can recall the days of building applications by hand using my own tools and rolling in potentially build tools like YUI compressor and so on. But today, I can't imagine using another build tool other than Sencha Cmd for the applications we construct. So Sencha Cmd is cross-platform. It does run on Java, so it will run on Mac, OS X, and as well as any Linux platform, I guess the most popular ones. And yeah, I believe it does work on Windows too. So Sencha Cmd gives you a suite of code generators. Initially, when you start with Sencha Cmd, you're going to generate a scaffold for your application. This basically allows you to create all the folders, files, and so on that you need to begin your application, including a basic application known as a bootstrap application. From there, you can generate data stores, data models, and controllers. In addition to those, you can generate themes and views. However, today this is only available for Ext JS. I imagine Sencha will extend Sencha Command to generate themes and views for Sencha Touch. In addition to those, you're able to generate device profiles and input form classes, but according to the documentation, these are for touch only. Profiles are specific to Sencha Touch applications, whereas form panels can be shared between Ext JS and Sencha Touch. So I imagine that may be rolled into the general code generator suite as well. So in addition to code generators, you have the ability to manage what's known as a workspace. This is a place in your file system where you can manage multiple applications, and those multiple applications have the ability to share resources very easily, including frameworks, themes, packages, and other general classes that you would create to share across multiple applications. So in order to generate a workspace, you initially will execute Sencha generate workspace from within your ext5x directory, and you tell it a path. You give it a path to place all the files. Next, I change directories over, and in that ext.js source directory, which is my app workspace /ext, I have to execute Sencha generate app and then pass the arguments for the namespace, which is my app1, and then a path, which is back1 directory in my app1. And I follow that exact same pattern to generate two other applications. And again, this is all contained within the my app workspace directory in my file system. And in order to look at the contents, I cd back1 directory, change directory, and in there I can see my application directories, as well as a location for builds, the source directory for ext.js, and a location for any shared packages. Now, the important part here to realize is that the workspace gives you quite a bit of flexibility in generating multiple applications, but you only have to worry about having one copy of Ext.js to serve those applications, as well as any other features. I think that's extremely powerful, and we leverage this wherever possible. Sencha Command also has under the hood a JavaScript optimizer, compiler, and some code optimizers that we often don't get to see because it just works whenever you go to do a production build. I'll be discussing this a little bit more in detail later on. So one of the new features that I think a lot of folks could use is the lightweight web server. So for example, if you're working on a proof of concept or perhaps in a sandbox, that is, you want to be able to serve files, you can execute Sencha web-port, pass in the port number, and then start. And what he's going to go ahead and do is just start a web server for you. That makes it extremely easy to look at the directories for your workspace and launch an application. Again, this is extremely lightweight, so we're not talking about having any server-side logic, which can be advantageous for things like prototypes and so on. You do have native packaging tools. Now, Grgur had mentioned that you can package your Ext.js within Cordova, and that is the same exactly for the Sencha Touch applications that you may want to write as well. So the package manager, I won't dive in too much, but I will say that you can download packages after registering perhaps repositories like Git repos and so on. In Ext.js 5, one of the interesting things is they went ahead and broke up certain pieces of the framework into packages to help reduce the burden on the build. So for example, the ARIA portion or charts or locale are all broken up into various packages, and you may want to include them if you need them. But the reality is if you don't need them, they're not in there by default, which actually reduces the load on your applications altogether. All of the themes for your applications are going to go ahead and be placed in packages as well. And the core of Sencha Touch and Ext.js is known as Sencha Core. That itself also is its own package. So Sencha Command gives you quite a bit of flexibility when it comes to folding in any custom requirements into the build scripts. Now, this does require Ant knowledge, which I am no expert in, but I have seen instances where folks have folded in Sencha Command into their own Ant build processes, and they've experienced extreme success. And I'm really happy to see that Sencha had the forethought into using Ant, which is a well-known technology in the Java world, to allow folks who can leverage it to do so. So there are a few new features to Sencha Command that with 5.0 are extremely useful. The first thing is the Sencha Command watches app.json. I'll be demonstrating Sencha app watch in a second. The next thing is that there's a builds object which was added to apps.json, and then there are some call parent optimizations which are supposed to be released in 5.0.1. I'll walk you through those in a second. So if you're used to using Sass, you may have been used to the Compass watch. I can tell you from experience that once I got a chance to use Sencha App Watch to automatically update the bootstrap and so on, I learned that I could write less code and actually develop faster, which actually made me extremely happy. And I'll walk you through that right now. So on the right, I have a terminal screen, and on the left, I will go ahead and open my IDE. And I'm going to demonstrate one of the advantages for the new Sencha App Watch. So I'm going to go ahead and execute Sencha App Watch here. And what he's going to do is go ahead and scan the directory structure. This is my application for my app 1. And pre-compute things such as the Compass stuff. And it's going to go ahead and wait for any changes in the file system. We actually get indication down here. So what I'm going to demonstrate is the ability to just create a class and reference it via Ext type and not have to create the code to make explicit requires. And Sencha Command will automatically detect that there's an Ext type required, that there was a new file created, and that it'll automatically merge the requirements for us, which is really cool. So I'm going to begin first with creating a new file. I'll call him new view. And I'm going to just manually type in, oh, fantastic. It saw changes immediately because this IDE likes to write file system changes. That's great. So let's go ahead and write ext define, and we're going to call him myapp1.view.main.newView. He will extend ext.panel. Let's use the full qualified domain name here. And I'll give him an Ext type of new view. Okay, fantastic. Now from here, I'm going to give him a config option block here, and this is per type of config we're talking about. Okay, so I'm just going to give him an HTML property of new view class. Now you can see as I'm typing, because my IDE is a little bit jumpy on writing file system changes, that Sencha App Watch is automatically detecting file system changes and making things update accordingly. And what he's actually doing is he's updating the bootstrap.json file. And bootstrap.json is quite large, but ultimately what he is responsible for is making sure that all your files are loaded at the right time in the right order. So all I did to date was create this new class. And what I'm going to do is go back to the main view. And what I'll do is I'll show you first what the application looks like. So if I refresh this app, we don't see any changes. And the reason is because I didn't actually make an implementation change. So this section here represents our center tab panel. He's in a border layout and he's in the center. This is the out-of-the-box, plain Jane, bootstrap application. So if I go down here to this tab panel and simply type in Ext type, new view, and then we'll give him a title of new view, just to see him go into place. Sencha App Watch found our changes, and what we should see is that a new tab appears. Oh, that's fantastic. The demo gods make me mad. Ext type new view. Ext type new view. That worked. Oh, that's beautiful. JS. Why didn't he work? That's awesome. You mean that should work? Okay, well, I must have foobarred something, but I can tell you this actually works. It should work, and I've actually used this in an application I'll demo in a second. So let's go ahead and move forward in the interest of time. So I just showed you that Sencha App Watch looks at your code. That's awesome. And it updates bootstrap.json accordingly and so on. What it'll also do is look at your apps.json file, which is a descriptor file for many assets and so on. On the right, I actually have a list of builds, which is really cool. And you can actually create many different permutations, so many builds based on themes or locales. So you can imagine if you wanted a Hebrew-only gray theme, you can create a custom build for that. I think that's pretty powerful, and I definitely think that's an awesome tool, new feature to Sencha Command. So if you're used to executing or developing with Sencha Touch or Ext JS 4 and beyond, you're used to executing or writing code such as this call parent. This is known as superclass method chaining. Well, the reality is that this call parent was released in Ext JS 4, the new class system, and it totally reduced the amount of code you had to type. But the reality is that it actually added overhead to the JavaScript runtime. So what they've done with Sencha Command is they've cleaned up quite a bit, and that's known as the this.call parent, I guess, optimizations. So to date, that is in Sencha Command 5.0, the various out-of-the-box framework builds have this enabled, but this will be released for everyone to use in 5.0.1. I'm not aware of any updates to any timetables to when they're going to release it. So in this example, we actually have an init component method. This is the live view. This is the raw coded view that the developer sees, and he executes the me.call parent effectively, calling these superclasses in a component method. On the right, this is an exploded version of the compiled or minified version of the code. And we notice a very big difference in the translation from me.call parent or this.call parent. And what Sencha Command essentially does is re-injects the older way of superclass method chaining. And it does this because ultimately they want to make sure that when you go to production, you have the highest performing code available to you. So while it does inflate your code base a little bit, it increases the responsiveness of your applications. So I think that's an awesome new feature for Sencha Command. So if you want to learn more about Sencha Command, I would highly suggest only typing HTTP once. Apparently I did a copy and paste fail here. But docs.sencha.com/extjs/5.0.0 is going to be the way to start. Sencha has done an amazing job of documenting Ext JS 5's launch as well as Sencha Command 5, and I highly suggest everybody who is on this podcast to go and look at this documentation. It is a fantastic place to learn a lot of things. So the one thing I wanted to walk you guys through before we actually end this is application that we are co-developing. So Sencha has been doing an amazing job of creating a suite of tools such as App Inspector to give you quite a bit of intelligence on your application's performance. Well, I had, in April, spent some time at the Sencha office and when talking to Don Griffin, learned that Sencha Command had quite a bit of intelligence internally about your code that previously wasn't exposed. And I worked with he and his team to expose some of that and wrote a UI on top of that. So Sencha Command knows that certain classes are loaded, why they're loaded, and so on. And the reality is sometimes you may not know why. So for example, if you were to generate or you would code up a grid panel and you may not realize that panel itself is a class that is being automatically included, because maybe you're new to the framework or so on, you may want to know why panel is being required, why is component being required, and so on. And this new tool, which has yet to be named, will give you that intelligence, and this is based on data that Sencha Command actually generates based on the AST or abstract syntax tree intelligence that it provides. So over here I have an example grid panel that was selected, and it tells me that grid panel actually has two dependencies. It has a grid view dependency and the panel table dependency. And I have an opportunity to drill down as far as I want and look at other dependencies and so on. Now, this is using D3.js. I wrote a wrapper around D3.js. That stuff is cool, but that's not, I think, what the awesome bit is. The awesome parts are, and of course the window's being jumpy, So for example, this app./view section represents the application that is what we're looking at. So I'm actually looking at the application and inspection for the application within the application. It's kind of interesting. But I can see that this code summary class requires X template, data session, and so on. And I may want to know, like, why is the doc layout required? So I can right-click on this guy and show dependencies. And on the right-hand side, I actually get a list of every line for every file why certain things are required. So we know that this code summary class, which I right-clicked, well, yes, he is automatically required because this is where the class is defined. But for example, you may not realize that the boot.js is required. Or, for example, ext, let's see if we can go beyond that. ext.js or doc.js. Here, this is a good example. So here, doc.js is required mainly because the superclass for that code summary class is panel. And I can drill down even further and click on some of these lines, which of course the demo gods are going to be mad to me today. Let's try it one more time. There we go. So the idea is that we can actually look at the code representation of your class, and it should scroll over to your code and highlight the line. There we go. So it gives you an opportunity to have a greater level of intelligence. So we're going to continue to work with the Sencha on this, and this will continue to be refined, and we're going to continue to make sure that this is rock solid for you guys, and this will be announced eventually in the future. So that's pretty much all I have. I thank you guys for being a part of this first webinar from Modus Create, and we look forward to seeing you guys again.